Welcome everybody to day 3, Future of Money Inspired Conference with Caroline Ong. Meaningful entrepreneurship and business ethics, a new measure of success. With her finger firmly on the pulse of the future of entrepreneurship, built on values and trust, Caroline Ong talks to us today in detail about bridging in credibility, reliability, intimacy, and self-orientation, all pillars of the trust quotient, into mainstream business practices. Caroline has more than 20 years experience in people-centric engagements, with her most recent 10 years in management consulting, specializing in human capital consulting. Caroline is Malaysia's country general manager in Leaderonomics, where she continues to engage stakeholders to achieve business results through leadership and human capital interventions, and is dynamically leading this initiative to generate a greater understanding of the future of what financial stability looks like. Contrary to current day trends that favors automation, Caroline presents a cause-driven agenda in combining people and business to enable both to work in tandem for profit and product satisfaction. To understand how exactly, tune in into our next speaker session with Caroline Ong. Welcome, Caroline Ong, to the Inspired Conference, Future of Money, Meaningful Entrepreneurship and Business Ethics, a New Measure of Success. Welcome. Hello, Caroline.
Hi, Vanita. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Caroline. And I want to start with this quote that you mentioned: not maximize profit, but to create value. And as we keep that thought in our minds, Caroline, as we start, through the lens of your extensive experience in human capital consulting, what is the meaning, definition, and understanding of business ethics and entrepreneurship?
Thank you, Vanita. I think that's an excellent start, because when we talk about this topic, right, entrepreneurship and ethical business ethics, right, I think the first thing that we need to establish is, and I'm hoping that I'm speaking to entrepreneurs and leaders and CEOs or future entrepreneurs, yeah? So we need to start with the definition of entrepreneurship, which basically is you start up and you run a business, right? So then the question is this: what is the purpose of a business? Just to go a little bit back, and sometimes I say I reveal a little bit too much about my age, but when I was in university many years ago,
okay.
I was doing an economics degree, and this is a fundamental question that our professors pose to us. So what is the purpose of a business? You are in economics, you should know this, right? And well, I guess to make money, yeah. So that is usually the definition, and that is popularized by a lot of economists, by a lot of like Milton Friedman, who was the 1976 Nobel Prize winner. Yeah. So the purpose of a business is really to make money, maximize it. Yeah. But of course, if you ask people like management gurus like Peter Drucker, you would say is to create a customer, to maintain a customer, yeah, which is then tied to making money, right? So usually we go in with that, but I think times have changed. That was the necessity and the definition, but I think times have changed, and there have been, for example, in the 1990s, a shift to something called people, planet, profit. Okay, PPPs, right? So people, planet, profit. That is something that came up in the 1990s. And in the year 2000, times have shifted again. And if we look at Thomas Friedman, who writes The World is a Flat Place, yeah. So he says that 2007, I think, is really the beginning of the times where things have really changed in the shift of the era to what he calls the cognitive era. And with the cognitive era, why I think this is important to recognize the historical development and the purpose is today. Today, when we are running a business, when we are thinking of starting up a business, for those who are still young, or even if you're not so young, you still can start a business,
Yeah.
So in these cases, I think we need to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of running a business? And it has really shifted to beyond, when it's a cognitive era like this, it's beyond money. It's about how do you create value, just like what you mentioned, Radhika.
Yeah.
How do you create value? How do you give that value? And it's not to only your shareholders meaning, perhaps people who have invested in you and yourself, but it's also to your employees, it's also to your customers, it's to your ecosystem, even your suppliers, right? And to the planet. That's why it's people, planet, and profit in that manner. So the community, which is surrounding us, that when we think about creating a business, when we think about why are we doing this, we have to think about that, the value for them. Yeah. So I think that's the first part about defining entrepreneurship and purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. And cognitive learning, that is a phrase we use very often in the education line. Understanding your learning, understanding why you're learning what you're learning, and to process to that experience. So
Yeah.
it really makes sense and fits into understanding about the financial entrepreneurship and ethical part of what we're trying to do to develop our business.
Yeah.
And as we are beginning, Caroline, to see the effects of the pandemic, of deflation and inflation on businesses and on consumers, why is pivoting to creating value and not just extracting value important for entrepreneurship?
I think the pandemic has emphasized and accelerated that purpose of business that we just spoke about, in the sense that, of course, you still have to be able to sustain the business, yeah, as a given. But I think more and more in this pandemic, we are actually seeing that humanity rises above everything else. Right? When we see how businesses are impacted, and yet we see the response of the consumers, which are actually the people who would sustain the business, and the response of the employees and the communities, we are gravitated towards the main purpose of how value is created for humanity. And so I would think that it's changed. It just re-emphasized and put more focus into that. But if we were to say, take another step back in history, the thing is, even, I understand that in the United States of America, you have the Declaration of Independence, and one phrase that often comes to mind is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Yeah. So, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is not to the individual. It's not just to the individual, I should say that. It is not just to the business owner, but it is also to the communities. And that's why you are creating value and meaning for all the stakeholders. You don't extract, by what you're saying, you're extracting value from it. No, you give value. You give and you will be given. And I think the pandemic has actually, brought this to the forefront even more. So definitely, I think it has just emphasized it so much.
Yeah, and deep diving a little bit more on business ethics, another very big open frame and clearly needs to be defined within the context of individual businesses, of course. What are the important touch points on definition and design for this, Caroline?
Yeah, I think touch points, yeah, it's where throughout the whole process of us creating business, of us serving our customers, of us making sure that we deliver. But when we look at how we do it, I think that's the touch points that will come in terms of business value and ethics. Because at the end of the day, the whole chain, the whole value chain that you are using as a business owner, as a business driver to create value, that whole chain are all your touch points. And if I may quote Warren Buffett, yeah, and I'm going to just quote him here in this, yeah. he says that it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. So if it takes 20 years to build a reputation, this is for an individual, right? And 5 minutes to ruin it, we would really double think whether this is something that we are creating value and touch point along each of those process steps. Or are we sometimes thinking that it doesn't matter, we can cut some corners here and there? I think that's the thing that comes to mind. How do we deliver in such a way that we would not ruin the reputation of the company, of the individuals that are associated to the company?
And to deep dive a little bit more on business ethics, another very big open frame that needs to clearly be defined within the context of individual businesses. What are the important touch points on definition and design for this?
Thank you, Vanita, for that question, because I think, yeah, you're right. Business ethics is such a big area that we can cover. And I think for today, let's talk about how we run our business, right? The ethics or the moral principles, that there are right and wrong things that we need to do, that we should be doing. And, the touch points are really what is the right and wrong thing to do across all these different transactions. From the start of business creation as an entrepreneur, right? The purpose of the business, to communicating that to our people, our teams, to seeking out the clients and designing the products and delivering the services or the products and to close it off. So all of this in the ecosystem, I think we need to have very business ethics can be defined as the way that we run this business, and not just the code of conduct, but really, how do we think and execute and operationalize this? And that's where we deliver something purposefully and be able to contribute, going back to what we spoke about, value, right? To be able to give value to the system. So I like to think of business ethics in that context, so that the touch points that we have is across the whole value chain, number one. And number two is about not just the code of conduct, but how do we think and operationalize all those value that we are thinking of in terms of contributing back to the communities and the society and all the other stakeholders. Because you know why this is important. If I may share a quote by Warren Buffett, okay, and I'm going to pull it up so that we don't misquote him. So what he says here is that it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. So if that's the case, when we look at ourselves and we think that, sometimes it is really tempting when we are pressured to not go the full way, or to say that some things can give. Yeah. As a business owner and as a person who's running the business, there are a lot of things like this. But we go back to creating value, and we go back to the potential possibility of ruining our reputation. I think that's when the business ethics would come in. Yeah.
And to deep dive further into business ethics, another very big frame that needs to be clearly defined within the context of individual businesses. What are the important touch points on definition and design for this, Caroline?
Yeah, I think you see on screen right now a quote, right, by Warren Buffett, right? And he says that it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. So if we think in that context, that's what business ethics is, right? Because basically it is how do we build the value for our shareholders, for our stakeholders in the whole value chain. And in that, you are not just saying something, but you are actually doing it. And that is business ethics. Is, of course, in a formal legal way. There's a lot of organizations who call it code of conduct and things like that, yeah? But when we think of the essence of it, I think the focus is this. We should focus, or we need to focus on the value that we are delivering across everything, because at the end of the day, it will come back. It will come back to ruin you. So I think we would like to think of it as what is the right thing to do, and we know it, and that needs to be aligned to the purpose of why we are in the business.
Thanks for that, Caroline. Yes, it's reaping, it's sowing. It's a very important principle, and we will talk a little bit about that slightly later. As country general manager of Leaderonomics, and we live in a generation now that is so cause-driven, a generation that is wanting a voice, wanting a platform, to show their abilities, their creative ingenuity, and their skills. And Leaderonomics being a cause-driven leadership development initiative. Can you tell us a little bit about how you are leading this initiative to generate a greater understanding of the future of what financial stability looks like?
Yeah, I think the first response to that is there is no financial stability today. Yeah.
No special formula.
No, and look at the pandemic, what is happening.
Yeah.
And I think, quote unquote, a lot of people are referring to this as worse than the Great Depression. Yeah. And that is in the 1930s. Yeah. So what we are looking at right now is how do you not generate financial stability? Because I think it's a little bit too much to ask, yeah. But how do you achieve what you need to do, which is financially driven as well? Because you do want to be sustainable in your business, yeah. You don't want to be a pop-up business that appears and then goes away. You can't really generate as much value that way, so it needs to be long-term. So I agree with that approach. Now, I think what we need to be convinced of, and this is when the cost-driven organization like Leaderonomics comes in. It seems a bit strange because in the past it used to be all about financial KPIs and how much revenue you bring in, and a lot of focus is for business owners like ourselves. It is really how do you get the most bang for your buck, right? How do you make that work? And that is true. We still have to hustle. Yeah? But the thing is, I think the myth that we need to not believe in is the investment in people will never come back. It will. It will. And I want to quote something. In the past, for us, we call ourselves a cost-driven enterprise, and that is also sometimes what we call a social enterprise, right? So I'm just going to share a little bit on what we do here. Okay, so in this cost-driven enterprise that I'm leading up here in Malaysia, in Leaderonomics, we really believe in growing people into leaders and building communities, of love and transforming the nation or the nations that we are in right now. So why I'm mentioning this is the myth that I talk about is people are saying, no, how do you even generate money this way? At the end of the day, there is a study. And I'm just going to read here so that I make sure I get it right. It's called Gutenberg study, which studied 500,000 people across 429 firms. And it really was a long study, it was 5 years. It actually suggested there is a positive impact on both operating financial performance, which is ROA, return on assets, as well as things like stock returns. When the purpose of a company is communicated clearly, that cause that you are driving towards, that the investment in the cause, in your people, will come back financially. So I think this is something that we need to keep in mind because, well, I do have to say that times have changed, as we mentioned, and even the most recent Deloitte human capital studies show that actually leaders are prioritizing societal impact more than annual performance in terms of financial customer and financial customer performance, because they know studies have shown that it will come back. So I think this is something that I want to highlight because I think we're talking about the future of money here. And we need to be able to tell that the future of money is not focused our eyes and our attention only on money. It is not. It is focusing on the business and the people. Because in that case, we can actually redefine how the business sustainability in the long run comes in. And that's when we converge, especially when you look at Industry Revolution 4.0 now. This is the current challenges plus the pandemic, right? How do we converge all of this together? The human part and the technology part. And if you look at AI that is happening today, how do you as a business owner be able to fight with the machines and the technology? You don't. You don't. You leverage it and you put the focus on humanity and people and cause because that's the one that will come back. That's the one that will give you the return. And if you talk about future of money, I think we have to start looking at it from that direction.
Yes, Caroline. And to quote one of our other speakers, our network is our net worth. Our network is our net worth. The human connection, the human connection and the asset of having that kind of a support, that kind of a surrounding is going to determine your success in a business, in generating profit. So we see the connection here, very powerfully. Thank you, Caroline. To move further into this subject, we know that there are many successful businesses out there that have shown exemplary profit with purpose-driven models that have increased their net worth. But what does being purpose-driven really mean in this space?
Yeah, I think purpose-driven, purpose-led, cause-driven, all these are the social enterprises. These are the interchangeable words that we are hearing more and more today. These are becoming mainstream rather than the odd one out. Yeah. So I think it really is about how do we represent ourselves as a very authentic approach. What we are doing is we are actually generating social capital. Yeah. So you mentioned just now the quote from the other speaker, and an absolutely wonderful quote. So with that is how do we generate social capital? Because what we are trying to do here is in this world where we put the human at the forefront, it is really looking at, what you are saying, are you also doing? Okay. And when we're looking at that, do our people as well as our clients be aligned with that? Now, if we go back to famous speakers and thought leaders like Simon Sinek, he always talk about the why, right? The why a company exists. And do we focus on that? Or is it the what and how, the what and the how? This is what we do. This is what we're going to sell you. I think as business in the future or even in the present, this is really present, right? I think that's the question that we need to ask ourselves. How do we be purpose-driven from the why perspective? Now, it is honestly not an easy question because sometimes it's reverse engineering. We've been in the business for some time. And we've always been focused on the what and the how. And then now you're asking me the why. Yeah, but it is true. We do have to go back to the roots of it. And there are a lot of struggles. In fact, HBR has written an article on this as well, that a lot of times as business leaders or even founders, we find it difficult to ask ourselves that question and to push it forward also because we know there's a risk involved here. The risk is that if I put it out there and I don't deliver what I say I will, the why and the meaning and the purpose. So what will happen is I'm creating a risk for myself here. What if I fail? Right? So this fear sometimes would drive us to shy away from it. And there is also sometimes a misconception that, these are just fluffy vision, mission stuff, values, that you put on the wall. But I think that's the very challenge that I want to ask ourselves. Why are we afraid of it? Why are we afraid of it? And instead of facing it with courage and making it real and delivering, that's how we overcome it. Do we turn to the other side and say, no, we don't talk about it? I think that's something that we all, I would want to challenge ourselves, even myself, as we look at our team. How do we come up with not just a strong purpose, but be able to deliver it? I think that's where it comes together.
Yeah, and Caroline, you used the word reverse engineering. It's almost like, putting the end up to visually see what that looks like at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So you build that journey and that road mapping, which is very, very important. Why am I building this business? What is my core ethos? What is my intention? What is my objective? And again, what is the add value? We talked about adding value instead of extracting. And this is a very important part of that exercise, I believe. Yeah. Thank you, Caroline. And a great segue into the next question. Walking the talk, practicing what you preach, is sometimes easier said than done. How, and playing devil's advocate here, how has some organizations really breached this, not understanding that embedding ethical values into business development plans cannot be superficial, but must be reflected in their overall ethos? Can you speak a little bit more on that?
There is that risk that we spoke about, right? Yeah. So that risk, if we don't focus on making sure we deliver what we say, which is we walk the talk, I think it will play out. And I think beyond this, business development as in a narrow scope would be talking about getting the business and the ethics of how we get the business, but it's more so in a larger scheme of things, how do we develop our whole business, right? How do we run our business? I think, of course, closer to home, there would be 1MDB, which is a worldwide case study right now that is ongoing investigations. We shall not speak more about that, but I think it's a well-known case study about what can go wrong. And of course, in other countries, this is in every country. We have big things that's happening, like Ponzi schemes, even, with Bernie or Bernard Madoff, right? And then we have the Enron case, which when it happened, it just shocked everybody. How did this happen? How did it happen in such a firm that is so big, that is so well known, and across so many people? No, but that's exactly about business development. How do you want to run your business? How do you want to run your business ethically or not so ethically? But if we scope it down to, say, a smaller business, okay, let's not talk about all these big businesses. Let's talk about us. Let's talk about you and I. So in the business that we run, do you think you can run away from the social media, the police that's always typing all their comments, if you promise to sell something or to deliver something and you don't? In this technological age, it will boomerang back to you. It will backfire because the ethics, or the lack of it rather, would actually be very quickly be known across the whole world, and you won't be able to sustain your business. So I don't think it's a risk that you want to take.
Absolutely, yeah. And with the social media era, a photograph, a tweet, a Facebook feed is going to, generate that information and spread it out worldwide almost instantly. And
Viral,
that's very important. Yeah, what you say is what you need to portray and deliver at the end of the day.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you, Caroline. And with COVID-19 lockdown currently, we have seen that there has been a shift in realizing what is important. Health services and workers are now termed as essential frontline support. And we know that there's been a great strain on them, as there has been no preparation of the scale ever imagined, that should be needed or would be needed. As leaders and entrepreneurs, and for our listeners today, how can we prepare? And again, what are the touch points that can provide impact to the people that we are serving in a sustainable measure?
It's honestly a difficult question that you're asking because I think I just want to route back to that. We need to look at our whole ecosystem. And I think you brought up a very important point. There are people who are frontliners in our businesses, but honestly, are they the only ones who would keep us sustainable? No. And I want to recognize that, yes, while we recognize the risk and the danger that the frontliners are doing for us, but I also want to recognize those who are behind the screen. Yeah, to run a business, honestly, you need both ends of it. And in this both ends of it, how do we run something that is sustainable? And in this COVID situation, it really forces us to pivot and to change things around. So for example, even for us as leaders, it brought something to the mind that are our people serving us, or are we serving the people? Who is serving who right now? And of course, there's also another word to describe this, which is servant leadership, right? But exactly, this is when we are looking at sustaining this business, and if we say that they are serving us, good luck, because they will not be serving you for long, number one. Number two, it's not a sustainable practice. And that's why you need to continue to focus on your people and on your clients and on your ecosystem. And how do you pivot in times like this to prepare yourself? It's all the things that we are doing that is aligned to the purpose. Now, I think what has changed during this COVID-19 is the method of delivery, right? Because if you are still aligned to the purpose of what you're trying to do meaningfully, it's the methodology instead of face-to-face. For example, you and I, Vanita, we are now on a Zoom call, right? Yeah. Yep. So that has changed. And even the team that we have in Metronomics, for example, because we have a community team that runs children kids camps, and we actually partner with a lot of organizations to do that. So instead of running a camp physically, which we can't, and the children are at home, needing to be encouraged, needing to be heard, needing to be taught and led, what do? We ran a digital boot camp. Yeah, and we ran it, for example, with Malaysia MDEC, which is a development government-related entity in Malaysia, because this is how we run the digital side of things in Malaysia, right? You just have to tweak and pivot. And when we think about bringing value, and as long as you know that you're aligned, you just have to figure it out. How do you deliver even in times like this? And I just want to maybe share a little video after this, because I want to share a real case study here. Now, one of our clients is a water utility company in Malaysia. It's called Air Selangor. Selangor is one of our states where we operate here. And when we work with them in terms of leadership development of their people, now, not only you are actually helping them to build succession planning for the organization, you are helping them to achieve what they need to deliver to their clients, which is about water and sustainability of resources like water. So what happened is their high potentials organized a camp for the underprivileged children, and we help them to step up to lead the children in that. And it also is for the children of the employees. So you can see how the ecosystem is coming together. You have your clients, you have your purpose, you have your employees, you even have the children of the employees, and the communities, which is the underprivileged, coming together. Now, that is how we need to pivot in times like this. And I'm just going to show you. Of course, this was taken just before our COVID, so it's in person, but I think it's a beautiful video where we can see how do we align purposes with the whole ecosystem. And I'm going to share this with you. Okay, so if you look at that, water as a resource, did you see that part? Yeah,
I did.
yeah, I think I really want to challenge ourselves here as business owners, as entrepreneurs. We need to look at our whole value chain.
Yeah.
How do we bring value to all those different parts of the value chain? Are we even plotting, naming, leveraging, and delivering value? So these are the kind of things that I want to encourage us to think when we think about the future of money. It's not about money. It's about this whole thing. And therefore, it will come back as we first talk about it. Yeah, it will come back. But you must be able to name each one of these, draw out your value chain, and be able to see how do you create purpose and value for each one of this. Yeah, and just going beyond what we do in Hydronomics. I mean, even for example, Big Four, KPMG, there's a very good case study where they looked at 40,000 of their employees in KPMG. By the way, I was ex-PwC, but I'm citing KPMG. But this is because it's such a good case study, I thought we should mention it, where they look at people's roles and they ask them, what is your purpose? And then when they look at their purpose, they tied it to the purpose of KPMG, which is inspire confidence, empower change. So if you're able to do that, which is connect the dots between what the organization is supposed to be doing versus what I'm doing on a daily basis, this line of sight would actually help them to see how to deliver value and be able to drive the value. And therefore, you'll be able to get the returns on it. So that is how it works. But yeah, that's one of the examples. And the other example was really a more local example where we looked at, I was just 2 weeks ago delivering a session for very senior leaders of a big organization in Malaysia, which I cannot name. Yeah, but anyways, the leaders was trying to cascade their mission and vision and purpose downwards to the departments and downward to the teams and downward to the individuals. So after a 3-day session, they realized if I myself cannot articulate as a leader my purpose that is linked to the company purpose, it would not cascade. So I think it all starts with us as an individual leader. And this is, for me, something I want to encourage us to be able to draw that value chain for the company, because we are all leaders here, and draw our personal link to that as well.
Yes, and that quote comes back to mind, not just maximizing profit, but creating value. And looking at that video as well, Caroline, the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, came into mind, about environment, clean water, health, education for the larger population. And what a beautiful tie-in to just give that holistic experience for our customers and for a business and for employers and employees as well.
Yeah, I think we just need to be creative, Anita. We need to be creative to think through the value that we can bring. And then you're right, it can even be tied back to the SDG goals. Right?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. More value means more profit. This is another quote from you. More trust, more impact, and repeat business. Can you share with us some of the on-ground initiatives that Leaderonomics has done to build sustainable impacts for economic growth?
Yeah, so in Leaderonomics, of course, for us, we work across the communities that you have seen just now. And then I spoke a little bit about the organizations or in corporate, where we deal with market leaders as well as government-linked organizations to deliver that value. But I think at the end of the day, what I like to bring forth to our listeners here today is the application bit, right? How does more value means more money, right? To me, sometimes that sounds a little bit ironic, but it is true, because when you are looking at profit making, it is not a one-off. It needs to be sustainable. How do you then bring that sustainability? It's because people trust you, right? And that is when I want to bring something which is interesting here, is that, Airbnb, for example. No, we all, I believe, many of us have actually, for one time or another, booked an Airbnb or stayed or actually heard of it, Now, the innovation that they brought about was, to a lot of people, about the innovation about business model, How did they even think of it? You don't own the place and then you're able to rent it out, how does that even, that's mind-boggling, right? That creativity that we spoke about. But actually, more than that, more than just a creative business model, what they have innovated to build the trust that we spoke about, that is the real innovation, because they have enabled you and I, Vanita, to stay in a stranger's house, okay, in a different place, and be able to say, pay money for that, So somehow they're able to innovate using technology, be able to innovate trust in terms of, if I want to maximize profit, I must make sure that people trust me. And in this case, I create, using technology, a platform for you to trust me, which is you have ratings. You can rate, you can read the ratings, and it's both sides of the equation, right? Where both the person who is offering the service as well as the one who's purchasing the service would actually come together, and Airbnb facilitates the trust platform. So I think that is something that if we look at beyond what Leaderonomics is doing, because we are a social enterprise, and I want to bring it to the ground, because we may have listeners who say, we are not social enterprise. I don't do what you do. Yes, but think of it this way. Airbnb doesn't do what we do, but they build trust. And that's when the business comes back. That same ironic statement is the one that will work if there's trust. And that's using technology, because we are enabled right now. But I think we also have to be a little bit careful that using technology as is, without the human touch, can have its downfall. And that's what we have to be careful about, which is why, for example, a bad case study of this would be in 2014. I think, we have heard of this. There were terrorist attacks, and there was one particular one at a cafe. And so, everybody was trying to use Uber, right? Just get me out of here. And what happened was, because Uber has such pricing mechanism, which is based on technology, suddenly the price went up like double, triple, and many times fold. And then, we can't get an Uber, but we need to be safe. We need to get out of here. Now, Uber had to do a public apology on that. But that is when we rely completely on technology and there's no circuit breakers. The circuit breaker is actually the human. So I think that the challenge to ourselves is this: how do we build trust using technology, but at the same time, we embed that whole process with human embedded in it? Which is why I come back to the first thing that we spoke about, the people, right? If you have the purpose, you invest in the purpose, you invest in the people, it will come back.
Yeah, the circuit breaker is that human connection that makes sense. And this hits home for me, Caroline, because I've done this when I want to book a holiday or a resort or a Airbnb. I look at the review, I look at the remarks and make my decision based on what is being said. And the power of that feedback there is actually generating or pulling away business. So we don't think of it that way, and it's a powerful tool, like you say, to increase value and also generate profit.
Yeah. So I think I don't know. I think sometimes we run ahead of ourselves. Yeah. So as a business owner and country managing director, I know that we sometimes do this, right? We want to invest a lot in moving ahead with the tools and the technology, and let's not leave the people behind, because they will be the main value differentiator.
Yes, and we've heard of IQ, we've heard of EQ. I think we have to add a TQ, a trust quotient, into that mix to see the power of this. Thank you, Caroline. Now, trust is in establishments has shifted in times like this, as we have quite extensively discussed. Can you just clearly tell us again, where has it shifted to? Is it to people? Is it to organizations? Where has that trust shifted to?
Actually, this is a very good question, because we assume, and let's go back to that example of Airbnb, right? And using that to kick it off, right? So we used to be trusting who? Our parents, yeah, our neighbors, people that we know, our friends, yeah. But you see how in Airbnb, the example you gave, Anita, you don't know the reviewers, right? You don't know them personally, but you trusted them. So the society, the modern society, the trust has shifted from people who we know to other entities, yeah. And there is an organization called Edelman, where they actually have something called a trust barometer, which measures trust, how and who do you trust, right? And they actually measure two main components. One is competence, meaning to say, do you deliver your promises, yeah? And two is ethics. Do you do the right thing? And do you work to improve society? So I'm going to share with you a finding here. All right.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you. So this is the 2020 Edelman Trust Barometer that I'm sharing here, with the two dimensions of trust, being competent and less competent, or ethical and unethical. So what they were measuring is how trust have shifted, or who do we trust, right, as consumers? So we trust, do we trust NGOs? Do we trust businesses? Do we trust the media, or do we trust government? So if you look at this chart, yeah, what it basically says, and here you can see that, let's first look at competency, meaning to say, again, the definition being, when you say you would do something, do you deliver on what you say you would, right? So the most trust that people have on delivering, being competent, is the business. So businesses, they say they do it, yeah, they will do it. Not very good ratings either, but yeah, it's the best of the lot. And then that is followed by NGOs, followed by media, and unfortunately, followed by government. So of recent times, across all countries, I think we all see that the trust in government being able to do what they say they will do has really been challenged. Yeah. That's one. And in terms of ethics, which is on this axis here, if we look at this, which organization does consumers feel that they are doing the right thing and that they are working to improve the society? The highest point would be NGOs, followed by business, followed again in the same order by media and by government. So if you look at this, really, I think the ranking shows us that although no institution at this time is seen as both ethical and competent, unfortunately, not even the business, because we fall below the line in terms of ethics, yeah, which is why we really need to make a difference here. But if you look at it, businesses, owners of businesses, future owner of businesses, people who are running businesses, it is in our hands. People are trusting us, mainly out of these four categories, to be doing the right thing, right? And in fact, another part of this same survey says that 92% of your employees are expecting the CEO, their employer CEO, to speak up on one or more issues ranging from income inequality to diversity, and to help them to train for the future, right? So they actually expect the CEO to speak up, and that's 92%, and 73% expect a prospective employer to be able to offer the opportunity to shape the future of the society in a positive way. Now, what does this mean? This means that if you want to retain the people who is bringing you the value and the money, sustaining the business, you want to retain your employees, you need to be ethical. You need to be competent. You want to attract future good employees, you need to be ethical. You need to be competent. It's even expected of you. So if this mandate, and trust is given to us, how can we not do it? So I think this is the question that I have for us. If we are going back again to this whole topic about the future of money, this is where the future is. Build trust and deliver on the trust that you said you're going to do.
Thank you, Caroline. And can you summarize for us the key points or the key pillars of the trust equation?
Yeah, so if you look at both this ethical and competency, basically what it boils down to is the trust equation or trustworthiness. How do you know whether you can trust somebody? Yeah, it is this sounds like a mathematical equation, but it helps. Yeah, so trustworthiness is first making sure that there is credibility. And then you add to that, there is reliability. Remember, we said that, you do what you do, right? So that's reliability. And then there is intimacy. We'll speak a little bit more about that. And there is something that we need to reduce, which is self-orientation. So let me just walk us through a little bit on this. So basically what we're looking at is, if as an organization or as an individual, you want to increase trustworthiness, you must be able to answer this question. In terms of credibility, or C, is your client, your employee, your network, your suppliers, your stakeholders, your board, right? Can they trust what you say? What is the credibility that you bring to the table? Or are you just talking, or are you saying something that is real, that has that whole sense of purpose behind? Then you look at reliability. Can the people around you trust that you would do what you say you would do? Okay. Then when you come to intimacy, do they feel comfortable or safe discussing something with you? Are you enabling them to be able to be in that safe zone that they can be with you? Do you build that intimacy with them? So if you want to increase trust for the people, for your clients, for your businesses, for your suppliers and your ecosystem, you need to increase this three, C, R, and I. Increase credibility, reliability, intimacy. But what you need to reduce is self-orientation. Now, if you're always focused on making money for yourself, yeah, that's when people will not trust you, because you need to be able to reduce your self-orientation on yourself, but instead focus on the other party, on the customer, being customer-driven, being employee-driven, being purpose-driven, so that they know that you care, that you honestly do care, and that they are able to trust you, because you are not just focused on making money for yourself. So when you talk about the future of business, you must be able to drive that point, to reduce self-orientation, but to increase credibility, reliability, and intimacy.
Thank you, Caroline. And
does that make sense, Vanita?
Absolutely. And I was going to say, as business owners, we prepare ourselves and we set up the hardware, so correctly and strongly. But looking at the software, I define this as software, the skills and the human value and the connection and the cross collaboration that is needed, not just to maximize profit, but to generate value is so important. Yeah, as a business leader who has not looked into this area, I think this is so much information, something that is workable, something that is very fluid and can be incorporated in the context of, the kind of business they are working in. So very, very informative, and it makes total sense, Caroline. I wish we had another hour with you, but unfortunately not. And finally, in one sentence, Caroline, and I know this is going to be difficult because you have a wealth of information that flows out, to share. In one sentence, the future of money is, complete that.
I wish we had one more hour. There's something else that I want to share, but we will leave it for another time on psychological safety and what that means. But what I want to really end here is this, Vanita. Yeah, is when we talk about the future of money, and just to summarize all of this together, as how do we create, deliver, sustain value across all stakeholders, not just shareholders, but stakeholders, and that's customers and employees and suppliers and the environment, right? And all of this, right? So how do we do all to create, deliver, and sustain value by being purposeful as a business? And it's not just about putting that as a mission and vision and values, but how do we operationalize and align this purpose meaningfully and ethically for all of the stakeholders? And that future of money is not in the future. That future of money is in the present. Because we need to start today. If we have not started, we have to start now. And as I mentioned earlier, with one of the case studies that one of my clients have, the realization is we must start with ourselves, right, as a leader. So to summarize all of that, I can't do this in one sentence, but to summarize all of that is the future of money is being able to create, deliver, and sustain value across all stakeholders by being a purposeful business which operationalizes and aligns its purpose meaningfully, ethically, for its people, for its clients, for its communities, suppliers, ecosystem, environment, and shareholders. And having that future to be today, in the present, starting today, starting now, starting with ourselves. So if that kind of summarizes what is future of money, I would say we can do it. We can do this, and let's do it together.
Caroline Ong, Country General Manager, Leaderonomics of Malaysia. Thank you so much for this information-packed session for our Inspired Conference, Meaningful Entrepreneurship and Business Ethics, a new measure of success. we look forward, Caroline, to joining you with your initiatives that are coming forward, and we encourage our listeners today to get in touch with you if they would like to learn more about what has been spoken today. Caroline, thank you so much. Indeed, a great pleasure, and we will pick up this conversation after further, if we can. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure, and I would like to say thank you really for being such a really gracious host, and I really hope that there's something that everybody will have a little bit to take away and to apply, because I think it is so important for us to step up now at this time. So thank you so much, Vanita.
Well said. Thank you, Caroline. Bye.
Bye.